Welcome to G Fun Facts Online, where we explore the most fascinating corners of science and technology. Imagine a witness to a crime, one who sees every detail and never forgets. A witness who can't be intimidated, who can't lie, and who holds the undeniable truth locked within their very essence. This witness isn't a person. It's a molecule. Deoxyribonucleic acid, or as we all know it, DNA. For decades, the files of unsolved crimes, so-called cold cases, gathered dust in evidence lockers, representing investigative dead ends and endless heartbreak for families. But a scientific revolution began that would awaken this silent witness. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of how forensic DNA technology breathes life into the coldest cases, solves impossible mysteries, and rewrites the rules of justice. It's a story of accidental discoveries, brilliant detective work, and a technology so powerful it can reach back through time and point a finger at a killer. The journey begins in the 1980s. Before then, forensic science relied on things like blood typing. It was useful, but it could only narrow down a pool of suspects. It couldn't pinpoint one person. But in 1984, a British geneticist named Sir Alec Jeffreys was studying hereditary diseases when he stumbled upon something groundbreaking. He found regions in our DNA that vary wildly from person to person. He developed a way to visualize these variations as a unique pattern, like a supermarket barcode for humans, and he called it a DNA fingerprint. This was revolutionary. For the first time, science could link a person to a biological sample with incredible accuracy. But the real test, the case that would change the world, happened right in Jeffreys' backyard in Leicestershire, England. In 1983, a 15-year-old girl named Linda Mann was murdered. 3 years later, another 15-year-old, Dawn Ashworth, was killed in the same horrific way. Police believed it was the same attacker. They eventually arrested a 17-year-old who even confessed to the second murder. But to be sure, they turned to Alec Jeffreys and his new DNA technique. The results were stunning. The DNA proved the suspect was innocent of both murders. This was the first time ever that DNA had exonerated a suspect who had already confessed. But the story gets even crazier. The DNA also proved that the same unknown man had committed both murders. This led the police to do something unprecedented. A genetic dragnet. They asked over 5,000 men in the area to voluntarily provide blood or saliva samples for testing. The real killer, a local baker named Colin Pitchfork, started to panic. He persuaded a coworker to give a sample for him, using his name. But his deception was his downfall. The coworker's friend overheard him boasting about it in a pub and alerted the police. When Colin Pitchfork's actual DNA was tested, it was a perfect match to the evidence from both crime scenes. In 1988, he became the first person in the world to be convicted of murder using DNA evidence. The Pitchfork case was a landmark. It showed the world the dual power of DNA, not just to convict the guilty, but just as importantly, to free the innocent. This success spurred incredible innovation. The early method needed a lot of high-quality DNA, which you don't always find at a crime scene. But the invention of the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, changed that. PCR is basically a DNA photocopier. It can take a single tiny strand of DNA and amplify it into millions of copies, enough to be analyzed. This led to the modern standard called STR analysis. Instead of looking at the whole DNA barcode, STR analysis focuses on just a few specific locations in our genome, where we have short, repeating sequences of DNA. The number of repeats at these locations varies a lot between people, creating a unique numerical profile. It's faster, more sensitive, and works with the degraded DNA often found in old evidence. But having a DNA profile is only half the battle. You need something to compare it to. That's where databases come in. In the United States, the FBI created CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, It's a massive, tiered database connecting local, state, and national labs. A DNA profile from a cold case can be uploaded, and if it matches a profile in the database from a convicted offender or another crime scene, investigators get a hit. This can instantly provide a suspect's name in a case that's been stalled for decades. This brings us to the modern era, where the technology has taken another quantum leap. You've probably heard of touch DNA. This refers to the microscopic skin cells we leave behind on everything we touch. We can now get a full DNA profile from these invisible traces left on a weapon, a piece of clothing, or a doorknob. In 2019, touch DNA was used to solve the 1982 murder of a man in Brighton, New York. Investigators were able to get a profile from skin cells left on the handle of the murder weapon, an axe, nearly 4 decades earlier. But perhaps the most transformative development is something called forensic genetic genealogy. This is what happens when a crime lab teams up with Ancestry.com. This technique is used when the suspect's DNA isn't in a criminal database like CODIS. Instead, investigators upload the profile to a public, direct-to-consumer genealogy database like GEDmatch, where people upload their own DNA results to find relatives. The database doesn't find the killer. It finds their second, third, or fourth cousins. Then, expert genealogists get to work. They use public records, birth certificates, obituaries, census data to build out the family trees of those relatives. By finding where the different family trees intersect, they can zero in on a potential suspect. And the case that put this technique on the map is one of the most infamous of all time, the Golden State Killer. This man terrorized California in the 70s and 80s, responsible for at least 13 murders and over 50 rapes. For 40 years, he was a ghost. His identity was a complete mystery. In 2018, investigators used a preserved DNA sample and uploaded it to GEDmatch. They found a handful of distant relatives. After months of painstaking genealogical research, tracing family lines back through generations, they identified a 72-year-old former police officer named Joseph James D'Angelo. To confirm it, they got a DNA sample from a tissue he threw away in a trash can. It was a perfect match. A 40-year-old reign of terror was finally over. Since then, forensic genetic genealogy has been used to solve hundreds of cold cases. It is, without a doubt, a game changer. But this incredible power also comes with a host of complex ethical and legal questions. It's a double-edged sword. Think about it. Your third cousin uploads their DNA to a website to find their great-great-grandmother, and in doing so, they could inadvertently lead police to you. Is that a violation of your genetic privacy? Did you consent to that search? This has sparked intense debate about privacy, consent, and the potential for a society under constant genetic surveillance. There are also concerns about bias, as studies have shown that minority populations are overrepresented in government DNA databases, meaning these familial searching techniques are more likely to impact certain communities. As we look to the future, the technology will only get more powerful. Next-generation sequencing will allow us to analyze even more degraded samples and even predict physical traits like eye and hair color from a DNA sample alone. Rapid DNA machines are being developed that can produce a profile in just 90 minutes. The ultimate hope is for a future with fewer cold cases. The technology offers a persistent hope that even after years of silence, the truth has a way of coming to light. The silent witness of DNA has been given a voice, and it is speaking louder and clearer than ever before, ensuring that for victims and their families, justice may be delayed, but it may no longer be denied. Thanks for tuning in to G Fun Facts Online.